Well, there were like 4 or 5 couples that me and my partner had kind of hooked up with like last year that we were hoping to get back in touch with for some, fun, sexy times. But then, like just various scheduling conflicts meant that we hadn't seen them in a while. So then I had to reach out to them and be like, hey, about that foursome we were going to have at some point. That's not happening anymore. And then I had to reach out to like combat partners who we see like very infrequently and then say to them like, hey, we're not together anymore, but I'm more than happy for you to pursue like a connection with them separately from me. But we will need to talk about what the boundaries of that will look like, right? If you want to maintain a friendship or like sexual relationship with both of us.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
Audio porn is all the rage these days, and Bloom delivers a library of sexy stories voiced by a diverse cast in multiple languages and accents. I've been telling you all about Bloom for a while now, so I felt the best way to convince you to sign up is to let you hear it for yourself. Here's a clip from Taming of the Brat, a hetero BDSM story with a male lead who couldn't be me, because we all know Billy, not a fan of brats.
Now, since you like to use that mouth so much...
You step out of your pants. Oh, your cock's straining against your underwear. Oh, I want so badly to take that thick shaft into my mouth.
Yeah, no touching. If you want this cock in your ass, you're going to behave. You're going to be a good girl. Do you understand?
You pull it out and stroke it in your hands. Fuck, I want it.
Sign up for a very oral year of fun at Bloom Stories, BLOOM stories.com. Use promo code MANWHORE for up to 50% off your membership. This week's episode of the Man-Whore Podcast is sponsored by Joy Mode, the natural, science-backed supplement to boost your sexual performance. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking prescription medication for erectile dysfunction. We had a bit of a chat in the champagne room about this recently. I'm not here to shame that decision. What I've said is that those prescription drugs come with side effects. It says so on the label. For example, there's a popular one that can give you a gnarly fucking headache if you're dehydrated. I know from personal experience. And the Bodega Boner pills, yes, that's what we're calling them now. Those are kind of nasty. They're not regulated. You don't know what's in them. Some of them have been hit with class action lawsuits. Joy Mode, on the other hand, lists all of their ingredients right there on their website. And none of them come with side effects that will distract you from the fun. Their ingredients enhance blood flow circulation and relax the penile tissues that can result in better boners. That's all. If you want to go the medication route and deal with a doctor, you do you, boo-boo. And if you want to grow a third testicle with some rhino pill you bought at a store that sells them next to toothbrushes, it's your body, it's your choice. But you can try the all-natural way with Joy Mode and get 20% off your first order when you visit usejoymode.com/manwhore. That's usejoymode, usejoymode.com/manwhore. Or use promo code manwhore at checkout.
Welcome to the Man-Whore Podcast.
Shout out to all the gym rats, to the stage kittens, to the motor bunnies. This is Billy Procida, and you are listening to the Man-Whore Podcast. Welcome to the show. This week on the pod, our main guest is Leanne Yau. She is the brainchild behind Polyphilia blog. You've probably seen her memes on social media. We'll be talking about polyamory breakups, as well as what it's like dating as a neurodivergent person. Looking forward to sharing that one with you all in a bit. But before I do, you're going to hear me interview Dr. Nicole Prause, who just released some really great research about the NoFap movement. And we'll just say it's efficacy, a word I rarely get to use. And that'll be coming up very, very shortly. But first is very important. I tell you that March 18th is the Naked Comedy Show at Hacienda. Yep. Because the first couple of shows sold out so far in advance, we're doing 2 shows. We're doing an 8 o'clock and a 10 o'clock. Great lineups. Lineups that feature some former Man-Whore Podcast guests you might recognize. Rachel Green, Madeline Smith, the two-timer, Calvin Cato, Patrick Holbert. The ticket link is going to be at the top of the show notes. It's also the ticket link in my bio on Instagram. And that was somebody paying me for a half-hour consultation call. But it's going to be a great time. I, of course, will be emceeing both shows. Hope you'll come on out to the Orgy House in Bushwick for some laughs and some genitals, but not genitals you get to touch. And if for some weird reason you insist on seeing me perform with my clothes on, I guess you can do that. March 21st, I will be at Young Ethel's in Brooklyn at 9 p.m. And March 23rd, I will be at the Tiny Cupboard out here in Bushwick on the 7 p.m. show. Not stand-up related, but definitely dates you're going to want to save. I announced them at the end of last week's episode. ManwhoreCon 2023, a ManwhoreCon that needs to shove 3 cons in one because, we missed a couple over the past few years. ManwhoreCon this year is going to be August 3rd through 6th. Save the dates in your cals, arrange your time off, start looking at flights, make your plans accordingly. I have literally no information other than August 3rd through 6th here in New York City. More details coming soon in the coming weeks. Minimal details about coming. Okay, now Dr. Nicole Prause, she's a researcher who just released a study about the NoFap movement. If you're unaware, she'll go into detail, but basically NoFap is a movement that mostly exists on Reddit and weird forum boards. It's just sad men who are telling each other not to jerk off for reasons. And she's going to tell us if there's really any benefit to doing this. Hello, Dr. Nicole Prause.
Hi, glad to be on to chat about this. We're excited it's finally out.
You did some research about the NoFap movement, which
Indeed.
I didn't even know was called the Reboot. I didn't even know that was a name for it.
Yeah, Reboot's like the umbrella. So it's this general idea that if you abstain from masturbation and or pornography for 30 or 90 or however many days they've decided that day is the right number of days, that you'll reboot or reset your brain back to its original healthy state. So,
Is that based on anything?
No.
Not the porn part, but the resetting in general? Is that a thing?
No, that doesn't happen. I'm not sure where they got the idea. Our best guess is there are certified sex addiction therapists that use a similar kind of idea when they're working with people who think they have a sex addiction problem. So maybe that's where they picked it up from, but there's really no science behind those recommendations.
Well, why don't you tell us the basics of what your study was about? What were you looking for? I hear there's a word called a hypothesis we once used in grade school. I think that might have been involved.
Oh, I'm going to get to use the hypothesis word. So I study orgasm physiology normally. I do neuroscience. We have people come in and masturbate to climax in the lab and study the physical processes around that. So we saw that some people from these groups were saying, oh, this is bad for you. And there's a dopamine spike that happens with climax that we know doesn't actually happen. And so those groups had kind of always been at the periphery. And then there were a series of studies that we'd say were qualitative. So that is, they just interviewed people who were practicing Reboot or NoFap and trying to see what they were claiming or saying. And all the qualitative studies are this looks bad. There was a lot of misogyny in the forums. People were kind of calling each other names, encouraging self-harm, punch yourself in the genitals so that you don't masturbate. And we're that sounds like a really bad idea. So we said, we should actually quantitatively do a study and test what their claims are. So one of the main claims they make is if you view too much pornography or masturbate too much, you have erectile dysfunction. There's really no scientific basis for that. But then they say if you abstain and if you pay us to help you abstain, then you'll get your erectile functioning back. So that was one of the things we tested is if you're more engaged with the NoFap forums, practices, do you actually have better erectile functioning? And for example, in that case, we found exactly the opposite. The more engaged people were, the worse their erectile functioning was. So it's really just kind of taking for the first time seriously some of their claims and piece by piece, testing different aspects of them to see, what's really true.
And is their goal in rebooting and doing NoFap, the goal is improved improved sexual performance? Is it to are they not getting hard-ons and they think this is going to fix it?
It's everything. So if you read some of the claims, they get made fun of sometimes for claiming superpowers. So like growing your hair, increasing your penis size, things that almost definitely couldn't happen. But then also some more banal things, just like your depression will improve. You'll become more confident with women. You can pick women up more easily. There's a lot of kind of pickup artist stuff in the forums.
I mean, I kind of fuck for a living and I jerk off a lot. So I don't know. My data says that that's full of shit.
I say the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. So we say, well, people who masturbate a lot probably have a high sex drive. And that's generally what we found. It's like if you masturbate a lot, you are more likely to use toys. You're more likely to do lots of other sexual things, including viewing pornography, including group sex, including, anal, all kinds of things. So, to me, this is a very strange kind of wall to set up to say, this is too much. Like masturbation at this level is, not going to be acceptable and you can't do that. But sex with a partner, as long as it's properly directed. I was like, okay, this just sounds like old rehashed religious shame or something that's been repackaged and now it's being sold, by reboot coaches online, a new brand of life coach.
Ultimately, you found out that the more someone engaged in these forums, the worse things got. Did y'all come up with any ideas for why that might be?
It depends what kind of messaging they're getting in the forum. So some of what we asked them is, to what extent have you seen a variety of different kinds of posts? So we asked if they'd seen posts that were misogynists, making sexist comments about women, if they'd seen anti-Semitic comments, because there's this idea that Jews control the pornography industry and they're causing race mixing. Yeah, of course. I know it was a little strange to me too. When I first started doing research in this area, I got a lot of anti-Semitic death threats and I was like, where's the anti-Semitism from in this?
They can't control everything. There's so few of them. They can't control all the media. So
it was very strange. We asked also if they had observed homicidal content, so like encouraging people to kill others or harm other people. And then we asked about suicidal content, and people endorsed these at surprisingly high rates. So they said, yes, we've seen these things in the forums. In particular, they said 1 in 5 people who visited the forum saw homicidal content. We said, excuse me, what are they threatening to do to people? So we have a follow-up paper that's under review now where we kind of break down, what are the death threats, the rape threats, and a lot of them are directed at the pornography industry. So they're like, if I ever see anyone who did this to me, because that's how they view it, it was done to me, I'm a victim, I'm going to kill them. And they describe in graphic detail, they name specific producers in some cases. It's very scary stuff.
We saw this happen. This is what happened in outside of Atlanta.
We think, we're very concerned about those kind of issues. And there was a guy, our paper goes into some detail. I don't know if you recall that guy in the UK who walked out his front door, killed his mother and then killed some poor random folks in the street before he died by suicide. And it turns out this guy was talking about doing NoFap all over Reddit. The month before he did that. Now, he hasn't said it was connected. He didn't say, this is in the name of reboot and walk out the door or anything. But these guys who appear to actually be acting on this violence are in these forums. And we don't know how much of a problem it goes from just talking about doing these terrible things to actually acting on them. But of course, that's a concern.
And what concerns me is that, there's plenty of them, I'm sure, showing up there with a sincere concern about what they might think is erectile dysfunction, but might actually just be nerves, because so many people who think they have ED because their dick didn't get hard a few times, they think it's because there's something wrong and really just might have been nervous. And when you're nervous, you don't usually get nice boners. And to me, I think, the more you're on these forums focused on the issue of my dick's not getting hard, the more your dick's not going to get hard. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy.
That was kind of what these qualitative studies had said before. So we had a previous paper that we found exactly that. We asked the guys in these forums about their anxiety symptoms and about how much pornography they were viewing. And you know what predicted their erectile functioning? Anxiety, not porn viewing. So this is just not what they should be doing. And of course, that's well known. There are lots of therapist groups, interventions that help with erectile function for real, that can actually improve the anxiety and the concerns people have around that. This is why like Viagra is one of the least refilled prescriptions. And part of why we think that happens is guys get Viagra, they use it a few times, they feel better, they feel more confident. And that was really the mechanism. Like the drug just helped them feel better in the bedroom or wherever they were having sex. And so then they didn't need to continue to use it so they don't refill.
And I've been that person.
Really?
Years ago, I had a Blue Chew sponsorship. So like I did use that product. I currently have a sponsor, Joy Mode, which is a more natural based one. But the point is like, I don't have erectile dysfunction. Most of the people who need it don't. You know why I use it when I've used either of these products is to let myself know I've got some backup.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, just in case I get a little nervous, you know what? This stuff is going to kind of help make it work even if I'm nervous. And then it becomes self-fulfilling. Like one time I was having trouble getting hard with the same woman. And so I took two pills and then like had this great sex session. Next time I saw her, I took one, had a great sex session. The time after that, I took none. It was just,
I'm just going to describe you every time now. That's exactly the process. Yeah. So it's like, it helps the anxiety. And, you know, so like when you say I have two in my back pocket, it's like the pills might have helped, or it may have just been knowing I had two in my pocket and saying like, this is going to be fine because I have two.
You know, is there anything else that you want people to know? Is there anything that you think is really important for like the general public that they really need to hear?
I think two quick pieces. One is there's probably no harm in, you know, not masturbating for a period. It really seems to be the particular groups that are promoting it that are
we're not bullying people to masturbate more.
I don't need you to masturbate. Do what you want to do. That's totally fine. But the other aspect is we often say like, oh, parents, talk to your kids about porn. Parents, guess what? Now you got to talk to your kids about anti-porn. You don't want your youth on these forums. They're not helpful. They're telling them to self-harm and hurt their genitals. If your kids are nervous about sex, and they almost by definition are, if they know about it, then be sure that, you know, they have a good outlet to talk to in you, and they can get some good information rather than getting sucked into some of these groups.
Well, Dr. Nicole Prause, thank you again so much for chatting with us. Where can people go to find you, follow you, take in more of your work? I'm going to link to the study in the show notes.
Great. I have a website that's liberoscenter.com, Liberos Center, all one word.com. And I'm on the Twitterverse for now. So happy to take questions there and share studies and papers with anyone who might have an interest.
Fantastic. Thank you again. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
Thanks for listening, and may you find good sex.
Now, that was only about a third of my interview with Dr. Nicole Prause. The entire interview is already up right now on my Patreon as a bonus episode. You can hear the entire interview at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. March 16th, we've got oh my God, there's a fire. Oh, no. It's just hot movie night. Ooh-wee, it's a hot movie night. Every month in the Champagne Room, our Discord server, my Patreon community, we gather around, we watch a vintage porno together. This month, we're going to be watching, I put it to y'all as a vote, and I'm telling you, if this one sucks, I'm getting back to the dictatorial thing, and I'm picking, but y'all decided we're watching Kansas City Trucking Company from 1976, a classic gay porn about the horny road life of truckers. Y'all trying to make me watch gay porn. All right, fine. That'll be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And one person I hope will be there is the recipient of this week's Fan Whore Appreciation Moment, Haley Martin. I want to thank you oh so much for supporting the Man Whore Podcast on Patreon. I know two things about Haley, and only two things. I know she's got a killer smile, and I know she supports independent content creation on the internet. In this world that is getting conglomerated upon conglomerated, there's little guys like me out here with a microphone just trying to speak some smut. Thanks for supporting the pod. Hope I'll see you at Hot Movie Night. And you too can become a member, support the podcast that you love, and join us for Hot Movie Night by visiting patreon.com/manwhorepodcast or download the Patreon app. Find me on there. But now for this week's guest, Leanne Yau, aka Polyphilia. Let's pull the curtain back and get to know the lady behind the memes.
Remember that dude at the video store that knew way too much about movies, but always made you laugh? Whatever happened to that guy? Well, he started a podcast, Binge Watchers Podcast. Go listen at bwpodcast.com. And every month the shows host a new theme of episodes like Bad Romances, Back in the Day Hits, and an annual horror movie marathon called Summer Slash. Listen now at bwpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I think kind of what I mean by kind of toxic positivity in the polyamorous community is because non-monogamous people, we're living a non-normative life, right? We're not following the traditional scripts. There's no kind of social blueprint for like how we do relationships in the same way that most people do. And then so because of that, people are constantly hoping that our relationships will fail because they're like, well, we followed the script. We want to be correct and we don't want you to be happy. And so there's this kind of weird pressure in the polyamorous community to just pretend that everything is fine, and everything is like sunshine and rainbows and compersion like all the time. I see this in people like wanting to pretend that they're not jealous, right? Like they really want to like be like super psyched for their partner going out with their other partner. And they're like, I'm totally fine with this. I don't have any insecurities at all. I'm gonna press it down. And I see this in, people staying in relationships for like way too long because they don't want to like have to break it to their family that their open marriage didn't work or whatever. And then having to be like, having to face people telling you, well, I told you so. I told you these relationships wouldn't work out. You should have listened to me. And it really sucks, right? Because, we just want to live our lives. And I think also that pretending that everything is fine is going to send people down some really toxic thought spirals in terms of like, having to deny your own emotions and deny your own reality and also not being able to talk about it for fear of like exposing that, God forbid, there are problems in your relationship.
You know who doesn't have to be toxically positive about their relationship style? Monogamous people. And I never hear people bitch and moan more than like monogamous people, especially like older married people. I've never heard people complain about people they claim to love more than someone who's been with somebody for 15 years or like in their early 40s. They're like, fucking hate my wife. What are you doing? Why are you here? You can go.
Yeah. So, and because like, polyamory as well, like there's like this whole thing about like ethics and honesty and stuff like baked into the culture, and that's great, love that, but then it also kind of creates this phenomenon where if someone behaves badly in polyamory, like if someone like cheated and then said, oh, I'm actually polyamorous and you should let me continue to cheat on you, and or like just does some other shitty thing, then if someone like say like brings that to like a Facebook group or a Reddit thread and said, oh, my partner did this shitty thing, instead of talking about, oh wow, that's a real phenomenon that happens and some people are really shitty, and they use various relationship styles, right? This happens in kink as well, like to perpetuate like toxic behaviors. Instead of doing that, instead of having an actual conversation about it, they go, oh, that's not real polyamory. What your partner was doing was not real polyamory. So we don't need to talk about it. They were just really toxic. But that's not us. That's not us. And there's this whole thing where they try and distance themselves like from some real kind of like toxic issues that are present in the community and that we should be having conversations about, but won't, because then we'd have to admit that this relationship style isn't 100% perfect and that there can be issues, because the fear is that it'll create more fuel for the fire that is mononormativity and kind of like wanting us to fail.
Meanwhile, none of it's actually like poly specific. It's just human specific. It is just humans do shitty things. Humans struggle with honesty, monogamous, non-monogamous. It doesn't matter that these things happen all over the place. Even the person who cheats and goes, well, I'm poly, you should let me go. I go, stop there. Let's just first deal with like, I think I'm polyamorous, because that's not going to excuse you from your cheating. And that's not then a reason to then demand something of your partner. But this is now some new information we have, but we're not going to use it to then justify bad behavior or to pressure people into making some sort of agreement they don't want to. So when they go, I'm poly, and I'd be like, shut the fuck up. stop there and start a whole new sentence about the other stuff.
Yeah, because sometimes it's just not relevant, like relationships are relationships. And, obviously there are some issues that are specific to polyamorous relationships, like, the whole kind of navigating, like balancing like multiple partners' needs, or like, what if you don't like your partner's other partner, right? There are very specific issues that only happen in polyamorous relationships. I get that. But also for the most part, it is about the same kind of stuff, like communication and honesty and trust and respect. So yeah, like, when stuff like that breaks down, a lot of people will naturally just go to like, oh, polyamory must have been the root of the problem. Oh, the whole, like this happened because you're polyamorous. It's extremely invalidating. And I think it pushes people to stay in polyamorous relationships that actually don't serve them because they don't want to prove people wrong, which then, creates more toxicity, which is not what we want. And I just wish there was much more honesty in the community that like shit does happen, basically. And it's okay when it does happen.
Someone brought, I forget who, but someone also brought up another point of why non-monogamous people will stay in like not great relationships for longer. In part, it's like the apathy of it because of having the other relationships. Sometimes people like in a monogamous relationship be like, well, I got to get out of this not good one so I can then go be with better people. And some non-monogamous people might be like, I don't know if I should break up with this person. And because you breaking up with them is not contingent on whether or not you get to experience love or sex elsewhere, it can sometimes like lag that process.
Yeah, and I see that and I hear you, and that absolutely does happen. But I also experience the flip side of it, which is when you have multiple partners, sometimes like through kind of experiencing, like different people loving you in different ways, you get to realize like what you actually want and deserve. And then, leave the relationships that aren't serving you. Like, absolutely, there are people who, and I talk about this on my platform, right? Like I literally wrote a tweet thread like very recently where I said, polyamory is not cobbling like multiple mediocre relationships together to make like one decent relationship, like, or like using other partners to kind of like cover up, what is a very dysfunctional relationship, and kind of, using other people to like kind of just like cover up the bits, in a sinking ship, right? It's not that, like, I very firmly believe that in order for polyamory to work and just non-monogamous relationships to work like sustainably, there needs to be like a core set of needs that is met in every connection that you have, right? Like, I want communication and trust and kind of respect and, being able to kind of like gently call each other out and accept flaws and stuff like that. I want that in every single connection that I have, not just romantic ones, like my sexual relationships, my casual relationships, my friendships, whatever. Like, I need that across the board. And so, if like there are certain core needs that are not being met in a relationship, sometimes having other people around to help me realize what I deserve, helps me, let go of, what is not serving me. But yeah, like there is absolutely this, people can go into very different directions. Like, absolutely, the apathy that you talk about, it definitely does happen, but there is a flip side to it as well.
And it's probably a good time to introduce. You're hearing her speak in more than 280 characters at a time, which is normally how I take in your wisdom. We're here with Leanne Yau, who is the brilliant creator behind Polyphilia, which you've probably seen on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. Big time polyamory influencer. So welcome to the show. I'm glad to finally have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been talking for like a while now, Billy, about me coming on the podcast. And I'm really excited to finally be here.
It feels like the right moment because as we're talking about this, you very recently broke up with a partner.
Yes.
And so this all must be resonating quite hard for you.
So just kind of bit of context, like I think we were originally scheduled for like earlier in the month, but then I emailed you and I was like, hey, Billy, I'm really sorry, but I'm actually breaking up with my partner today. So I can't do the interview because I'm really fucking stressed. And
what I loved about that was that like you knew, it seemed like you knew you were going to do this breakup and there was some fantasy you had in your head like, no, I could still do this. I'm going to be fine. Like I'm going to do the interview and I'm going to dump my partner who I love, who I can't be with. Right. It's going to be totally cool. So like a couple hours before we were going to record, you were like, I can't do it. I'm like, Totally get it. Totally get
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I had this whole thing planned out, right? Because, okay, so I'm autistic and, I'm like very much like, I love like planning things. Like, my Google Calendar is like very organized. I have like spreadsheets for like lots of things. But I'm like
a
peak
podcast at
polyamorous.
6 o'clock and then I'm going to cry at 9 o'clock. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, so I have like a very methodical way of going about things, and then but in the moment, I plan everything out, and then if something happens in the moment, and I'm like, oh, you know what, I actually can't do this. But yeah, no, like the timeline is like I had a fight with my partner, and then like the I broke up with him like 3 days later, and that day we happened to have the podcast interview scheduled, and I was like, it's fine, I'm gonna come home, gonna do the interview, and then we'll have a talk. But then I mean, I was being very optimistic. I was being extremely optimistic. I'm glad you were extremely empathetic and kind and understanding, and I really, really appreciate that. But yeah, now like I've taken the time. I mean,
ignoring that, I totally followed it up. You're ignoring though that I totally followed up with. Totally understand, unless like you feel like it'd be therapeutic to come on, because I will totally take someone in a train wreck moment. I will happily record that with them.
I want the tea, Leanne. Like that's what. Yeah, I mean, people. I think this is the thing about being like a polyamorous influencer, right? Like people, when you talk about relationships, people like want to know about like your relationships and what's going on in you. I mean, this applies to influencers more generally, right? Like you see like with what, the OG YouTube creators like Dan and Phil, like on YouTube, like people have been speculating for over a decade whether they're a thing, like. Yeah, like parasocial relationships get really complex, especially if you are someone who literally talks about relationships. Like people are. And
that's why I told you, like, we don't do topic based, because like we could listen to you talk about like poly tips and stuff, but I feel like most of my audience knows that, and I just feel like we'd all be far more curious your relationship to the topics rather than just someone being an expert. I feel like on a show where with a less inducted audience, you go off do that. But I'm like, if you're going to come on and talk about poly breaks, I'm like, well, let's talk about like your break. I mean, it just seems like the perfect time. And I know you just did like a really big post about it, about poly breakups, which y'all can go catch on her Instagram at Polyphilia blog. So you just had this big breakup, and we discussed via email a little bit like your hesitancy about talking about Leanne, right? Like we all know polyphilia, but you're like, I don't know how much I want them to know Leanne. So, what's that like? What's that about? How do you draw which boundaries to have with your audience about your personal life when you're talking about stuff that are going to make people want to know?
Yeah. So obviously my content is like based off my personal experiences, right? So, like like I'm like on the cusp of like millennial and Gen Z. I'm bisexual. I'm polyamorous and have been since I was 17 years old. I'm Chinese, and I'm diagnosed autistic and like ADHD. So, like all of these intersections like create like a very unique experience of polyamory for me. And I think because there isn't that much representation of polyamory, and the kind of idea of like the polyamorous influencer really only became a thing in the last like year or two, which is also, I started this page in November 2020. I haven't been doing this for very long.
Wait, really?
So, no, I haven't. I've been running this for like just over 2 years.
What were you doing? You weren't doing any of this pre-pandemic? I feel like you're the name Polyphilia I've seen for it feels like I've seen that for forever.
Nope. Nope. I'm not. I started this during the pandemic. I was in law school.
That's how prolific you are, is because I've seen so much of your name. I'm like, I must have been seeing her for years. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's testament to how much I was procrastinating on my law degree, that I poured so much time into running my page. And, in fact, I went to, fun fact about me, I studied law at Oxford University. The whole plan was to go to London and become a corporate lawyer. But then I started Polyphilia during the pandemic. It blew up in a very short space of time. And I also had a brief stint as a paralegal and realized, fuck that shit. And so now I'm doing this full time. I've been doing this full time for a year and a half now.
Yeah. How have you decided to draw the lines for, what's on and off limits to your audience in regards to your personal life?
Yeah. So, my content's based off my personal life, and is kind of informed by my personal experiences. But I try to kind of give advice that is, kind of as generally applicable to most people as I possibly can, because I mean, I'm not really interested in putting my life and my relationships under a microscope for people to pick apart and have their own opinions on. I think, you know, particularly with just the audience that I have, it can get very toxic very fast. Like, you know, the more people kind of speculating and having theories about, like, you know, my partners and kind of who they are and what they do and what they said or what they meant when they did this thing. And I don't need that in my life. So, you know, just for the sake of my own mental health and just, you know, just setting boundaries generally, and also for the privacy of my partners, which matters a lot to me, I don't talk about my relationships like on my public platform. I do share a little bit more detail on my Patreon. So I have a weekly video diary where I take some bits from my personal life and I expand on it, you know, in more detail, you know, as, you know, I usually kind of use them as like case studies to talk about like general kind of topics within polyamory. So for example, if I'm going through a breakup, then I'll talk about kind of polyamorous breakups and, you know, give insight on that generally. If I had like a threesome, then I'll talk about group sex and kind of navigating different situations related to that. And I
But
feel
you won't talk about
doing-
like what you personally like and don't like about, like, because I think there's a middle ground. Because when I hear you discuss wanting to be private, I hear like, I don't want to give the personal details and this, that, and the other thing, but also there's so much in between closed off and like bearing all. Even I, who I think most would perceive that like, oh, everything's on the table. There's stuff that's not. You just, you know, people don't always know what's not on the table because I usually don't talk about it because I don't agree.
You show people
what
you show people what you want them to see ultimately, right?
Yeah,
As a
or I'm
public figure.
comfortable sharing. But you know, I think. Here's my issue with people who are, I have a lover who's a little younger, so she's on the TikTok very much. And this is my beef with when she says I learned something on TikTok is, but what's the credentials of that person? And so, you know, so we had people who are learning about vaccines from someone who works the cashier at a gas station. It's like, that's not who you learn. There are people who studied the thing. I just feel like I don't go to my mechanic and tell them that they're wrong about my car because I personally don't know shit about cars, but like I do know a lot about, I don't know, the porn industry. And if I hear someone spouting off some bullshit, then I'm going to check them because like I know about this thing. So I say this to say, do you think there's a danger of people taking a lot of like relationship advice, sex advice from people who just say stuff, don't have necessarily like credentials, and also don't share their personal anecdotes or feelings to substantiate it?
I think there is a balance. I think you're right. And I think that, you know, there is value in kind of like following people who like have kind of like qualifications, whether it's like a degree or like, you know, like training or whatever. And, you know, I myself, like I'm starting like a course to become a therapist, you know, at the end of this month. And so, you know, I'm also interested in kind of getting the credentials needed so I can help more people. But then, you know, I think there's also value in lived experience. You know, sometimes like, yeah, like, okay, you know, you wouldn't, you might just kind of take some dude's opinion on TikTok with a pinch of salt, but sometimes some random person on TikTok or some random person on Twitter is able to encapsulate like your life experience in just like a very simple sentence, or, you know, just be able to like synthesize something that you that leads you to think about something in a new way. And that's kind of what I try to do, right? Like when I say like I give kind of insights on stuff kind of generally, you know, I try and kind of synthesize my experience without giving like too much detail, but like enough to be like, I've been there, I've been through this thing, and I wonder if you relate to this too. That's kind of the aim. You know, when I started my page, like my page is kind of more like information based now. Like when I first started, it was purely for entertainment. Like I did not set out like, you know, wanting to do this as my job. I kind of accidentally fell into it. You know, I started as a meme page. Like I was posting memes about polyamory. And I was just like, this is just something I went through. Hope you guys relate. And people were like, oh my God, this is so niche, but so relatable. And they share my stuff. And then over time, you know, people would be like, hey, can you talk more about this and this topic? And then so kind of this is how it evolved to like what it is today. But ultimately, I do still want to center lived experience because I think it's really important for people to talk like, you know, personally, like about stuff that's happening to them. But also have boundaries around like, you know, revealing like names and locations and things like that.
I don't think anyone who wants to learn more about your relationship to a topic is trying to be like, yeah, but I want like, the jobs, locations, and birth charts of your partners, right? They want to hear.
You would be surprised.
I mean, look, some do. Look, I get a fair share. I started this show talking to my exes, right? So it's like I have my fair share of dudes who hit me up to be like, yeah, but are they hot? Do you have pictures? That's always going to exist, and I'm just like, fuck off. But generally, I hear, for example, it's like when you say, if I have a threesome, I'll talk about threesomes, but I'm more interested to also hear not even the gritty details of that threesome, but rather your feelings about threesomes in addition to your tips about threesomes. So not just here's like 3 tips about threesomes, but also like, oh, here's what I like in threesomes generally. Here's what I don't like. Oh, here's an anecdote about the thing that I didn't like that encapsulates what I generally don't like in a threesome. That's where I'm like, so that's where I'm getting at, where if you don't have like, say, credentials, then you say lived experience, and I'm all on board with that. But then it's like, one does need to give some of that lived experience, some of those anecdotes in a private and respecting the identity markers kind of way, but like still speaking your experience or your preferences. Speak through the
absolutely.
lived experience.
No, I 100% agree with that. And, and I do that, right? Like, for example, the post that just came out today as I am recording this episode, the post that just went up, friendly reminder that it's okay to leave a polyamorous relationship. I find that a lot of non-monogamous people put pressure on themselves and to stay to prove to others that polyamory works. And as someone who has been there, don't. Your happiness and safety is more important. And so, that's kind of what I mean by, like, I reveal a bit about what I've been through, but like I don't go into like too much detail about the when and how and where. But then I also, kind of provide like insight on that, so that's the balance that I strike. And it's a struggle doing that every day. And sometimes, like I'll make a joke on my TikTok about like this like super crazy threesome I had or something. And then people will be like, whoa, wow, but yeah, like it's still not going to be, I don't want it to be, like I said, like I'm happy to show like bits, like snapshots, right? Like I have like a whole, like I also have a hashtag, like hashtag polyamory is, where I kind of talk, like give like specific snapshots of my life, but it's still a balance, right? Like I still kind of don't want it to be like a daily thing where I'm like, here's like where we went today and here's the date where I went on, here's what we did. But
I know me as
that.
a fan, I'm not too, I don't follow those people who are posting all that because they go like, I don't need to know like every moment you did every day. I'm just like, when someone's going to give me the advice, I usually want to know like how they came to that advice rather than like maybe they were just sitting around and be like, yeah, I think this is the thing. Now you have other partners, romantic partners, right? At the moment. So
yes.
do you when you go to, not even just when you did the breakup, I mean, I imagine you were like planning this breakup. Are you consulting with them? Like, are you asking for advice from them? Do you just seek emotional support from them? Like, how do your other partners play into you breaking up with a different partner?
Great question. So, the moment that I realized that the relationship was on the out, and obviously this didn't happen in a vacuum, right? It wasn't like everything was fine and then one day I was like, you know what, I'm out of here. Like things have been building up for a while, as it usually does in like in a lot of relationships. So it wasn't like my other partners were not aware of kind of all the things that had been going on and all the things that we've been working through. So, but I have 2 other partners. One of them I've been seeing for a year, and the other one I've been seeing for 8 months. And the relationship that I just broke up with, that had been 4 and a bit years. And my 2 other partners, their position from start to finish was do what's best for you. They never tried to tell me you should do this or you should do that. They did, give their opinion if I asked, right? But then it was never like unsolicited, like you should do this or whatever. Like I think we were all. This is something that I really appreciate about them, that, like they never try to sway me either way. But if I asked for their opinion, if I asked for their consult, if I were like, what would you do if this happened to you? Or like, am I being crazy? Like, do you think that this is appropriate or this is reasonable? Or like, how do you think I should phrase this? They would answer, right? So we were all very boundaried with our interactions on that front. And, I think when I ultimately made the decision to break up with my partner, they, like they were sad for me, but they understood why, and they understood that it was a decision that I felt empowered to do. They were there to support me through it. So, I this is the tricky thing, right? Because this is something that a lot of people kind of talk to me about, like, to what extent do you share, like, with your other partners, like, what is going on in your other relationships? And like, because there's a line, right? You don't want to get to a point where you're like bitching to someone about your other partner. Like, I don't think that's appropriate. But then, there's a line between like doing that, but also like, completely just being like, everything's fine and pretending everything's fine. And, like, this has nothing to do with us. We can just live in our fantasy world when I'm spending time with you. And I don't want either of those realities. So it's about kind of finding a balance in the middle, because I do think that when issues crop up, we should be able to talk about them. And, sometimes if you're the one in the relationship, you don't realize the kind of toxic patterns that are being perpetuated. And sometimes it takes talking to someone else, like a friend, a partner, whoever, and for them to get an outside perspective and for them to look at it more objectively and be like, hey, there's some shit going on here that, I'm going to flag. Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, like just generally speaking, they were very much there for me specifically. They were happy to go with me on like whatever I decided to do. And ultimately for me, it was ending the relationship, and they supported me through that.
What does supporting Leanne through a breakup look like? Is it like, hey, can we go on some walks? Do you have like a board game? You're like, can we please play that game? I know you guys don't like to play. It's like what does taking care of you look like?
I am not a board game polyamorous, firstly. Wow. I love it. I know the stereotype. It's very funny. I did have a Dungeons and Dragons group for a while, and one of my partners does rock climbing, and we do love Ren Fairs, but we don't fit all the stereotypes. Okay, but to answer your question, I mean, like, I think like the way I process breakups is, like, I guess like not traditional. Like some people they're like, I want to go to rebound and I'm going to like go out and fuck. And some people are like, I want to like stay in my room and cry and watch movies and eat ice cream. For me, something that, because having been through breaks in the past, I know what I'm like. So then what I said to my partners was, I'm going to be in like emotionless logistics planning mode for a while, for maybe like 1 to 2 weeks. Because I mean, there were a lot of logistical things that I needed to do to like disentangle myself from my partner, because we lived together, and we shared finances. So then I took on the responsibility of, sorting all of that out, like canceling plans, refunding tickets, like unlinking our dating profiles, like, changing our passwords, going through our accounts to see like which of the furniture he was going to pay me back for, like removing emailing our landlord to tell him I'd be moving out, things like that. Right.
When do you get to cry during all of that? That's so much work.
After. That's what I said after. So I said to my partners, I will probably have a breakdown in about a month's time. But in the meantime, I'm going to be in logistics mode. And it's only until I feel like everything's settled and everything's calm, I've taken care of everything, then I'm going to fall apart. And you will have to support me through that. So, I think one of my partners said to me, because I decided I was going to break up with my partner, and then 3 days later I did it, and I did everything. Like, I had everything in place. I moved out immediately so we wouldn't have to see each other post the breakup. I tried to make it as clean a break as I possibly could for myself and for him. And my other partner said to me, you did not fuck around. She was just like, you said you were going to do it, and you did it. You didn't dither. You didn't like have second thoughts. Like, you just did it, and you did all the logistics. And then when it happened, it happened. I mean, I had the breakup plan down to the minute. I was like, I'm going to come back for the podcast recording, which didn't end up happening, but the podcast recording is at 6. It'll probably end around 7 or 7:30. The breakup will happen at 7:30. My friend, you're going to come downstairs with your car ready, and you're going to pick me up after I finish the breakup, and then you're going to drive me to this person's house. And then I'm going to stay the night, and then the next day I'm going to be with this family friend where I'll be staying until I find a new place to live. Like, I kind of just went, I was honestly in a bit of fight or flight mode. And because I knew that I needed to sort everything out, because if I fell apart before then I wouldn't be able to. And so I did all of that before I did.
I wonder also, this can be what this could be what I might be suggesting here. Also, it could be totally not that, and just how one is. But do you think like the neurodivergency plays any role in that? Do you think there's something about like, if I have all this planned, like I'm a little safer emotionally because there's a plan and it's very set up?
Yes, I think it's a combination, right? Because I'm autistic and ADHD, and so kind of the autism comes out with like all the intense planning and the kind of like, kind of the zeroing and kind of stuff like that, and like the hyper communication and all that. And then the ADHD comes out with like the hyper focus, right? Like the kind of the constant kind of the lots of different thoughts coming in, and then. Yeah, and that kind of clashing with the autism. So it's very interesting. But yeah, no, absolutely the neurodivergence plays a part. And I process emotions like a little differently because I'm autistic. And sometimes it even takes me a little while to figure out like what I'm actually feeling. It's a phenomenon called alexithymia, I believe. So it's so yeah, the neurodivergence absolutely plays a part.
Mm-hmm. Where else does the autism play a role in your sex and dating life? How you experience it, how you practice it?
I think something that I've talked about on my platform before is the fact that I think being autistic, because I've known I was autistic since I was a very young age because I was diagnosed autistic like when I was like 5 or 6, but the ADHD diagnosis actually came like last July. So when you're autistic, a lot of social norms don't make sense to you anyway. Got a lot of stuff around like gender, sexuality, just like social norms. You don't kind of take them for granted the way that neurotypical people do. You kind of have to figure out like, everyone else has the rule book and you're just trying to like figure it out and make a lot of mistakes. And so,
and no one gives you fucking benefit of doubt if you make those mistakes.
Exactly.
Like, everyone, we were all there. I feel like I missed that day of school. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not diagnosed, but like everything about me says, as one partner says, the touch of the tism. I think it'd be funny if I say tickle the tism. I don't know. I feel like tickle's funnier, but but just the idea that like there's all these rules and I broke them and no one will tell me how or why I broke them, but they will tell me I broke them and they hate me because of it. And I'm like, I wouldn't have done it if someone had if I knew that was just give me the list. Yeah. I'll do it. Yeah, like the way I try and describe it to people is it's like learning a foreign language. So I speak 4 languages, and like something that I find, when kind of learning a new language is it's very similar to the way that I navigate the world being autistic, because it's like, like I can say the things, but I might not understand the culture or like the slang or like, just the things that people who are native to that country like just know. And I take time to figure it out. And the way I go about life, as an autistic person is the same. Yeah, like I could talk to people, like I like to socialize. I like the same, the same kind of stuff. But then there's always something that people just find a little bit off. So yeah, like, kind of the way I try and blend in is, like, it's kind of like trying to assimilate into a culture that I'm not very familiar with. And this is maybe why like autism, like previously, like very derogatorily was referred to as wrong planet syndrome, because like you're what
like it's a thing, like it was like people would say wrong planet syndrome instead of saying someone was autistic.
What? That's such a crazy name for a thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What if we called something else that? The guy in the wheelchair, he's in wrong planet syndrome. On his planet, they're all in chairs.
So it's this alien, they treat us like aliens. And there was a study that actually came out like last week about how the way that neurotypical people perceive neurodivergent people, apparently like with some of the things they do, there's an uncanny valley, like uncanny valley, which is like what you say like when you see like robots that act like a little human but not quite, and it's like that's really bizarre that they see us in the same way, that they talk to like a neurodivergent person, and the moment they break convention, they're like, are they human? Are they a robot? And it's like, it was wild to me. Like I saw that study and I was like, whoa.
And yet somehow, we're able to do these one-on-one sexual or romantic connections. And I don't know why I'm able to do that versus in a group of people. That's a struggle for me. So I feel like it's almost like some of the social norms for some people, at least the ones I connect with, get stripped away a bit. I think those I connect with the most also don't believe in all the social norm stuff and they
Yeah.
don't buy into all that. So
Exactly.
then that's stripped away. Now we're just two people trying to connect versus now we're in this more complicated group scenario. We're all trying to fit in and there's all these competing motivations and things going on that I don't get.
Yeah, no, that's the point I was trying to make, right? Like when you're autistic, when you're not neurodivergent, a lot of social norms don't make sense to you anyway. So then being in a non-monogamous relationship, being in a polyamorous relationship is really liberating because you are literally encouraged to make it up on your own. You're literally encouraged to tailor your relationships according to what makes sense to you and the people that you're with rather than following, this conventional script that may not work for everyone. So kind of that's why I think there's such a huge overlap between neurodivergence and queerness and polyamory, because I think and kink, I think they're all, and board games, and I think they're all like connected.
All those things have a lot of rules, right? There's a lot of rules. We like them. We know the rules typically. Yeah, big fan.
Yeah. So then, you do your own thing, you go your own way, and so yeah, like I think that's why because if you're already being forced to be unconventional just by the nature of who you are, whether because you're queer or whether because you're autistic or whatever.
Or Monopoly's your favorite game,
Yeah.
It's either way.
Like it makes it so much easier to then question everything else. It's like, well, okay, that definitely doesn't work for me. That conventional norm does not work for me. I'm not straight. That can't work. What else doesn't work for me? What else doesn't fit in my life? And how can I change that to make it work for me? Yeah, like hence the overlap, right? Hence the Venn diagram.
Absolutely. So on this this post you have up, this tweet thread or this post on Instagram, another thing you say is if your ex is still in your polycule, talk to the rest of the polycule about next steps, new boundaries on future contact and privacy, setting up separate containers for support. Is the breakup you just went through still in the polycule, or have you been through a breakup in the past where there's still someone in the thing and now you got to navigate that?
So my now ex is actually my metamor.
I know what a metamor is. And I know what like a great grandson is. I don't think I know what a four metamor is.
So then, I mean, if you blend those two concepts together, he's my partner's husband's partner's boyfriend.
Okay, so I feel like you'd only have to see him though at like the grandest of festivities, right? Like anything with like a 50+ person invite list, you might see him. But I feel like on like a 6-person hangout, I feel like that's something you can avoid easier when it's that far away. That's like seeing that like third cousin you never see.
I mean, you say that, but then, the thing is, we aren't just kind of connected through romantic relationships, right? Like, technically, yeah, okay, through like the polycule, if we're talking like romantic connections, like sure, like he's like 4 times removed, but I am very close friends with my partner's husband. So then, now that jumps down a level. I was building a close friendship. I was hoping to build a close friendship with his other partner when, we were, I guess, in a V. And so, like that's now kind of like up for renegotiation because of like the distance that I want to put between us, like for our own healing. That's a friendship that I will have to put on pause indefinitely. So, you have kind of very deep connections with people that aren't necessarily romantic, right? And so, it is complicated because like the 6 of us had a group chat and we used to hang out. Yeah.
Now it's got to be fractured, like with my family, where there's like 7 different group chats that like exclude or include a person based on who's fighting with who in the family at any given point in time. Yeah. What have those conversations sounded like for you in the past? Like when you're talking about renegotiating this entire cluster. Obviously, group chat looks differently. It's affected a friendship you were hoping to build. What other considerations do people need to look out for when this happens?
Well, there were like 4 or 5 couples that me and my partner had kind of hooked up with like last year that we were hoping to get back in touch with for some, fun, sexy times. But then, like just various scheduling conflicts meant that we hadn't seen them in a while. So then I had to reach out to them and be like, hey, about that foursome we were going to have at some point. That's not happening anymore. But I do have another boyfriend if you're interested. So things like that, right? And then I had to reach out to like commit partners who we see like very infrequently, and then say to them like, hey, we're not together anymore, but I'm more than happy for you to pursue like a connection with them separately from me. But we will need to talk about what the boundaries of that will look like, right? If you want to maintain a friendship or like sexual relationship with both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, reaching out to like his friends and being like, hey, like it was really nice to get to know you, but like, so as not to complicate out like, your loyalties to your best friend, I feel like, maybe we should take a step back. And then kind of reaching out to his mother and saying like, oh, I like, and things like that. And being like, hey, I hope things go well for you. Like, I'm really sorry about how things turned out. Like, I was thinking of everyone that we were connected to in whatever way possible.
Right. So are you doing even like kind of the more trivial comet partner? Like, I guess at what point do you say like, do you make this big list and go, I don't really got to inform them, or, I don't got to, okay, I can just let them know if they reach out, or did you really just go down the line and get it all?
I went down the line because I was primarily kind of the person who did a lot of like the kind of, maintaining connections kind of thing and the logistics. I mean, it was something I was good at and something that I really enjoyed doing. So I didn't mind doing that. And it was kind of also good to know that like I ticked that box. So then, I wouldn't have to worry like about like in a couple months, someone reaching out and being like, hey, so about that threesome, I'd be like, no. So, like I wanted to go down the line and sort that out as quickly as possible. So it would be a clean break.
Would that really set you off if like 6 months later somebody said like, hey, we're gonna be visiting your country and like that was hot that time. Do you two still want to like you couldn't just like casually be like, oh, we broke up 6-8 months back, but hey, I'm here. I got this. Would that really set you off to even be propositioned like that?
I mean, I don't think so, but then I just wanted to tie up as many loose ends as possible. That's just the kind of person that I am. Gotcha. I like to give myself and other people closure wherever possible.
Okay. Now this next slide, this is super. I mean, this resonates very hard with me. And I think this is a very popular thing. This is even among people who don't have successful Instagram pages, right? The urge, the public part of the breakup in poly, depending where you live, your poly crew might be like the poly crew and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm,
and so gossip, this idea of like canceling your partner, hitting up all your other poly group chats to talk shit. That's something that's really real. It's real in any breakups, but I think in poly it gets like amplified. Did you ever have the urge to do that? Did you have to stop yourself? Have you seen this happen with poly friends of yours? Like, what's your relationship to that urge to gossip or cancel after a break?
Yeah. I think this isn't like unique to polyamory, right? But I think obviously in polyamorous relationships, everyone's just a little bit more intimately connected than you would typically expect people to be. So then, the kind of information that's shared and kind of stuff like that, like the boundaries can be blurred if you don't talk about it. But I mean, yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have the urge, obviously. But then, I think
like I can fucking tweet right now. I can TikTok right now. You know how many people are going to see it? My impressions are good, buddy.
So yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't have that thought, right? But I think emotional maturity is about recognizing that your first thoughts are your upbringing and your second thoughts are like who you really are. And kind of controlling those impulses and being like, is this a good idea? And, I had to do this with a bunch of other things as well. Like, for example, after the breakup, like I moved out of, what was previously me and my partner's shared home. And then I had to find a new place, and living alone is really goddamn expensive. And only becoming ever more so, right? And I wanted to live alone specifically because if I lived with monogamous people, then, they would judge me for my lifestyle. But then I lived with polyamorous people, they follow me. So I had to live alone. So me and my other partner, my partner of 8 months, we were like, should we move in together? But then we thought about it and we were like, okay, would we be making this decision if not for the fact that A, we're really in love, and B, I just broke up with my other partner? Like, would we have made this decision independently if not for kind of recent events? And we were like, no, we don't want to, like, normally we would not be comfortable moving in with each other at 8 months. So we were like, okay, that means you shouldn't do it. So, like it's things like, I think a big part of polyamory is impulse control, because when there's so much freedom and autonomy, like, I think a lot of people who are new to polyamory, they're like, oh my God, I could date all the people. I could do all the things. Wow. And they jump into it. And they're like, kid in the candy store. And then they take on too much. They go on too many dates. And now they've got like 12 people that want a second date. And you're like, oh, fuck. So I think it is about, being measured in your interactions. Like, as much as it is like enjoying kind of the autonomy and freedom and you have, it's also about responsibility, upholding the existing commitments that you've made and being able to follow through with sustaining those connections. So yeah, like it's a lot of, it's okay to kind of like have like thoughts that are like inappropriate, as long as you think about it and, don't just like act on feeling, I suppose.
The Man Whore podcast is sponsored by Joy Mode, the all-natural boner booster that's going to give you some backup in the bedroom. Look, most of us dick people don't actually have erectile dysfunction. Just because you want a boner when you want a boner doesn't mean there's something biologically wrong with you. You might just be a little nervous. Well, this is what I do when I'm going to enter like a high-stress sexual situation. I take some Joy Mode. Joy Mode is filled with all natural ingredients to improve your blood flow, circulation, and boost your sex drive. And you can get 20% off your first order when you use promo code MANWHORE at checkout or visit usejoymode.com/manwhore. Again, save 20% off your first order at usejoymodnd.com/manwhore. The Man Whore podcast is sponsored by Bloom, the audio erotica platform with a diverse library of stories in a variety of languages and accents. Enjoy this clip from Good Kitty, a kinky same-sex femdom story.
The snug fit of the collar feels amazing around my neck. I'm yours. Yours to control. Yours to command. I hope it looks as good as it feels.
So pretty. Almost done. Just these now.
You hold up the ears with a smile and slide them onto my head.
There we go. Perfect.
Get off on more sexy stories with Bloom. Get up to 50% off your membership when you visit bloomstories.com and use promo code MANWHORE. Again, that's code MANWHORE at Bloom, BLOOM, stories.com.
I'm Kevin Miller, former pro athlete, author, father of 9, and self-help guide. I broadcast the Self-Helpful podcast from high up in the Colorado Rockies. I'm a fan and critic of self-help, and I invite today's most important influencers to grapple with their own wisdom in an authentic conversation about self-help and what drives them. With each guest, I conduct a 4-part series, and these candid explorations have been downloaded over 60 million times. I invite you to join me in the Self-Helpful podcast as we elevate our personal experience of life and the way we show up for others.
Being a fellow public person who talks about dating, have you had partners try to publicly speak on you after maybe a bad breakup?
No. And I purposefully date people who have little to no social media presence.
Oof, that's smart. That's a smart one. I could have used that tip a long time ago.
I just think, it makes it so much easier, right? Because I actually, like, for me personally, right, I'm not on social media outside of my job, and I feel like I'm on enough social media for my entire polycule, to be honest. Sure. So yeah, like, if I wasn't doing polyphilia, like, I'm literally not online at all.
After a breakup once, I saw I saw a tweet that they made that was something like, looking back, I can't tell if I really liked him or I really liked his very expensive sex toys. I'm like, you're just trying to hurt my feelings.
Well, that is cold. That is cold. Oh my God.
Gotta let that stuff run off my shoulders.
Oh.
And then another slide in here that sticks out to me, and I know it doesn't apply to this particular breakup for reasons that don't matter to people right now, but I will read this one. The beauty of polyamorous breakups now that you're speaking about connections, is that sometimes you can restructure your connection instead of ending it completely. Things may feel raw for a while, but if there are parts of your relationship that you feel would still work well in time, consider a de-escalation instead. Have you in the past done a de-escalation versus a full breakup? And if so, what were the factors that went into that decision?
Yeah, so I think like de-escalation is a really interesting topic because I think if you're able to salvage the parts of the connection that feel good to you, and you are genuinely able to fully grieve the bits that were lost and accept the new relationship for what it is without perpetuating maybe any toxic patterns that you had in the relationship you had previously, absolutely go for it. But the thing is, what I have found in my own attempts to de-escalate relationships in the past, I've only had one successful de-escalation. And a lot of in all the other cases, it was just much easier on us emotionally to have a clean break. Because, it's one thing to be like, here are the bits I like and here are the bits I don't. Let's just move, and let's just forget about the bits that we don't like and do the things that we do like. Yeah, okay, that looks great on paper. Emotionally, though, it's very difficult to grieve the parts of the relationship that are no longer a thing, that you hoped would be a thing but are not a thing, while keeping the bits that were good about the relationship, which makes you only hope that it was something more. So I think it's a very difficult balance to strike for a lot of people, and it's very difficult for quite a lot of people to accept the transition to like a new relationship, whether it's going from like partners to like friends, or like spouses to co-parents, or something
fuck
like that.
Buddies to platonic friends.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really difficult to do, and I think it really takes the right kind of people, the right kind of mindset, and the right circumstances. And unfortunately, a lot of the time it doesn't work out that way, but that's okay too. For me, I wanted to de-escalate. Me and my partner actually, prior to breaking up, we did actually talk about hey, do you think we could maybe start living apart and maybe having other people as nesting partners instead of each other, because we had various incompatibilities around our nesting arrangement. But then I think my partner was so attached to the idea of living with me that it was very difficult to conceive of the idea of living with someone else while maintaining a relationship with me. And at the end of it, when we talked about hey, so what are we now, what are we doing, he said, I think it'd just be easier on us emotionally to have a clean break. And I fully respect that decision, right? Because sometimes it's it's not worth it. Sometimes it's yeah, okay, I could do that, but also it hurts too much and I can't be asked, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the tough part with de-escalation is you both, I think part of the circumstances, you would both have to want to de-escalate and both want to de-escalate to the same, if you want to de-escalate to a purely sexual relationship from a romantic one, I mean, you're going to have to both want that. Otherwise, the other side's going to be but I still love you and want this romantic relationship, so I can't just fuck you. That's something that I've experienced where it's I don't think I could just fuck you, and we're going to pretend we don't love each other. So so it's no, you'd have to both want those at the same time. Otherwise, the escalation, like you said, it's great on paper. I think it's a very emotionally difficult to practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one de-escalation that I successfully did was, a situation where we were best friends. There was instant sexual chemistry when we first met, but then we didn't act on it for 2.5 years because neither of us the circumstances didn't line up for a really long time. And then we dated. And we dated for 4 months. It was disaster. And we were wow, we are not romantically compatible. We have had this building up for 2.5 years, and turns out it's not all that great. So then we broke up and we took some time apart, for about I don't know, 2 months. And then we came together and we were we still have a really good sexual connection though. So let's do that. Let's continue to do that. And we had a great friend with benefits relationship that lasted for 1.5 years. And then he got into a monogamous relationship, which is still going on today, 4 years later, and we are very good friends.
Yeah. I got one more question. This comes from our Ask the Guest channel in the Champagne Room. This is a patron only channel where if you ask a question for my guests, I will ask them it. It doesn't have to be a good or bad. If this question's not good, I didn't write it. It's okay. And if it's great, unfortunately, I can't take credit. So if y'all are interested in that, join the Patreon. You'll get access to that. But this one comes from Chuck. Chuck asks, with everything going on with social media and the way people are getting information and misinformation, this plays a little bit into how we started the podcast, but do you think social media is an effective medium to really educate people about polyamory?
I think that's a great question. So I think social media is a great way to raise awareness about things. You can utilize the algorithm to get views and kind of get people talking about something, right? That's why like so many social media outlets are now kind of like maximizing their advertising kind of like revenue and stuff like that, because that's what it's about, like putting things in front of people and making them aware of certain things, whether it's a product or a movement or a person or like whatever the fuck. So I think like in one sense, like that's kind of like a big thing about my platform. Like I make bite-sized content. I make easily accessible content so that people can see it, can digest it very easily, don't have to spend too long on it, and start thinking about it for themselves. Whether I like, and I think if people stay a little longer, then they might get educated. But then I think like the main aim is just to put the word polyamory in people's heads and get them to get the wheels to start turning. And if I'm able to do that, even for like, just like a random person in like bumfuck nowhere in like a red state, I feel like I've done my job. So, yes and no, essentially, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Because, like social media can be used for good or ill. And I think the way like sometimes like bite-sized content, like, it doesn't have like a lot of nuance and, but it starts a conversation. It gets people to do their own research, to do their own thinking. And I think that's where the real learning starts.
And before we go, I got to ask, so do you still feel like you're in the managerial phase of this breakup?
I mean, I don't really know.
Have you had your time to, have you felt this breakup yet?
Yes, in little bits, right? Like I've had like a 2-hour therapy session to process it. I've processed with my partners, I've had the time to kind of express kind of like anger and sadness about the whole thing. But I think it's not a linear process, right? Like, the 5 stages of grief and all that. So I expect, it'll come up in like little bits. As time goes on, but things are looking up for me. I found a really nice flat to move into. It's in a really nice part of town. It's big enough that I'll be able to host my partners. I'm really excited about moving in with one of my partners in the future if things kind of work out that way. Me and my 2 partners in Metamore have kind of grown a lot closer as a result of all this, and we've now kind of started forming what I think may turn into kind of like a bisexual unicorn quad, like where all 4 of us are like, because all 4 of us are bi and all 4 of us are like now like involved with each other in various ways. So like, I'm very excited about the possibilities stretching before me. And, it makes me more firm in my decision that, like this breakup was the right thing to do. And I'm also really glad that, I was able to recognize the fundamental incompatibilities and the vicious cycles we'd fallen into and get out of that at the right time before things got too ugly. And so, now I hope me and him can heal and move on and have the lives that we want to live apart. And so, things are going well for me. I hope things are going well for him too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I also think this all goes to show it's like just because someone is considered an expert in a field or is an influencer in a space, in the dating world, that does not make us immune from falling into bad relationships or being attracted to toxic, patterns or people or just having relationships that don't go the way we want. You are allowed to have relationships that fail as well. And you are allowed to make the same mistakes you tell people not to make, because we're all fucking humans trying to figure it out. And, sex and dating is certainly not a science.
Yeah, and I am extremely candid about the many, many, many mistakes that I have made on my polyamorous journey on my Patreon.
Well, that sounds like some spice worth signing up for. Leanne, just real quick, because I don't know your time, and it sounds like you're a very scheduled person based off this conversation.
I'm chill for this evening. You got me all evening.
Cool. So you down to would you be down to do a little Patreon bonus episode? I was thinking maybe we could keep it spicy behind the paywall. Do maybe some like your poly controversial or hot takes.
Oh God. I don't know. These are hot takes. I mean, I definitely have like incendiary takes, in the sense that like
I love that word.
yeah, you know, like
So
I definitely have like takes that like definitely cause a lot of controversy, but I also think I'm right, so I don't know if they're hot. But
well, I know. I think that's quite exactly what makes sense. Like, oh no, I'm right, and you just haven't figured it out yet. So that sounds perfect. So Patreon folks, you're going to hear that drop tomorrow. But for now, Leanne, where can people go to find you, follow you, and take in your work?
Sure. So I have the same handle on multiple platforms. My handle is Polyphilia Blog, POLYPHILIABLOG. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/polyphiliablog, where you can find all my bonus content. And I have a website, polyphilia.blog. I make it very easy for people to find me. Apart from like doing kind of free content on my page, like I said, I run a Patreon. I also offer private peer support to individuals, couples, polycules. I'm just a person on the internet. You can talk to me if you relate to my content and want to talk to someone who gets it, basically. And I have a shop as well where I sell cool polyamory merch.
I did take a peek at the merch. I was like, this is impressive. I got to step my game up. Leanne, thank you so much for opening up to us and letting us in a little bit more behind the polyphilia. This was great. And thank you so much. Why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
All right. It was really great talking to you, Billy. Thank you for listening to my. I'm going to do that again. Okay. What do you mean say goodbye? I don't know what to say. Thank you for having me on the podcast, Billy. It was great speaking with you.
I love honoring the struggle. You're like, what do I say to say goodbye? I'm like, some people just go with bye, but like, I'm going to watch how this plays out. Wait. Can you there's more poly content if you like that stuff, okay? If you just wait just a minute or two, you're going to get another couple minutes of polyamory content with Leanne Yau. Just hold up a second, okay? I'm going to play a little teaser for you in a moment. All the links to me and my guests this week, all of them, it's always in the show notes. Everything you need, they in the show notes. Do go follow Leanne. Go follow Dr. Nicole Prause. You'll see a link to her study in the show notes, right? See all my bullshits in there. The best and most private place to share your thoughts on this week's show is in the episode discussion channel in the Champagne Room, our super free, super fun, say it again, Chuck, super sex positive Discord server. Totally free to join. Come on in. Where's the link? In the show notes. Or go to manwhorepod.com/Discord. If you want to share your thoughts directly with me, send your comments, your questions, your queries, your criticisms. Yes, Mary Beth, your titty pictures. Yes, it's okay. To manwhorepod@gmail.com. Now, I have a bonus episode with Leanne that comes out tomorrow exclusively on Patreon, where she's going to share her incendiary takes on polyamory. I'm about to play a little teaser clip of that bonus episode. And like I said earlier, if you want to listen to these two bonus episodes with Dr. Nicole Prause and Leanne Yau, you can give me $5. You also can just try it out for free with my 7-day free trial on Patreon. Give it a try. Stick around if you like it. Stick around if you think I deserve a few dollars. And if you don't, I ain't mad at you. But for now, everybody, I got to go reward myself for, it might have been 6 hours of edging, and I think I deserve a goddamn snack like Rex Ryan. I'm going to McDonald's, and I'm going to get crazy. I'm going to fucking milkshake. Stay thirsty, everybody, and stay slutty. Not only do I think there are monogamous people who think they're monogamous, but they're not because they want other partners. I say any couple that does threesomes is not monogamous. They might only do a threesome once a year for the anniversary, but then you are not it. That is a on-off. That is a yes or no switch of monogamy. It's you are or you aren't. Non-monogamy has a spectrum, but monogamy, like the one rule is you don't fuck other people. So if you fuck other people together, you fucked other people. You're not monogamous. Welcome to the club. Here's your key. That's my take. And in my way, that to me, not only is it factually correct, but also I think it invites so many more people into being like, oh, I guess what we do isn't technically the norm. I guess that does make us part of them. And then maybe they're not wrong either, like I used to think, because I'm now closer to them than I thought.
Yeah, like I do think it is a spectrum. Although having said that, I do disagree with you that like monogamy is a spectrum and monogamy is not a spectrum and non-monogamy is, because I do actually see like the monogamy to polyamory thing like on a continuum. And for a couple of reasons. Like I think, yeah, like, you know, there are like mostly monogamous people who have the occasional threesome. And, you know, there are a lot of people who are like monogamish, like as Dan Savage would put it, right? I
hate
also,
monogamish as a term. That's where I start. That's where my injunction is. It's like, there is no monogamish. If the definition is you don't have sex with other people, once you have sex with other people, you are just no longer that. Now you're anything you want. You could put monogamish in the non-monogamy umbrella and I'll shut up about it. But like otherwise I go, those are just people who don't want to identify with the non-norm. That is the person who maybe is I think there are people who don't want to be lumped into a group they perceive to be oppressed.
You have a lot to focus on every day. Let Virginia Premier focus on your health coverage. Our health plan is only focused on Virginia, so we can connect you with quality healthcare and local resources. Our added benefits give you more value on top of your medical and drug coverage from Virginia Medicaid. See our benefits at virginiapremier.com/Medicaid and have your whole family with the same health plan. Virginia Premier, focused on Virginia, focused on you.